Number 7. Christopher Pullease. A South Florida police officer faced 4 criminal charges in 2022 in the aftermath of a body cam recorded incident in which it grabbed another officer by the throat. On November the 19th of 2021, law enforcement in Sunrise had apprehended a suspect for a violent felony and placed him in the back of a police cruiser. Sergeant Christopher Pullease started yelling at the handcuffed man while aiming a can of pepper spray at him. An unnamed female officer felt that his actions were unnecessarily aggressive. She approached Pullease from behind and dragged him back by his belt in what was interpreted as an attempt to de-escalate the situation. The sergeant turned around, grabbed her by the throat, and pushed her back against another police cruiser, warning her not to touch him. He then let go, walked over to other officers at the scene and told them to turn off their body cams. Pullease, a 21-year veteran of the department, was placed on desk duty 5 days after the incident and then suspended pending an investigation into his conduct. He was subsequently charged with felony battery on a law enforcement officer, felony tampering with evidence, misdemeanor assault on a law enforcement officer, and misdemeanor assault on a civilian. Pullease pleaded not guilty to all of the charges during a hearing in July of 2022, with his subsequent court appearance set for the fall of that year. Number 6. Eric Kelly. As indicated by an internal affairs investigation, a homicide detective for the Memphis Police Department began a romantic relationship with a woman he'd arrested in connection to a killing in 2018. Bridget Stafford, whom documents identified as a gang member, had been charged by Officer Eric Kelly as an accessory after the fact to the 2017 first-degree murder of a man named Robert Glyden. She later told investigators that the policeman who'd arrested her in April of 2018 had made his intentions known early on. During an interrogation, Kelly reportedly asked Stafford if she was an escort or an exotic dancer, gave her his card and told her to call him. A few months later, they began an affair at around the same time that Kelly was promoted to lieutenant. He had 2 different houses and gave Stafford the keys to his property in Midtown, where she stayed most of the time, as Kelly also had a girlfriend at the time. While in his home, Stafford had access to his guns and took photos with them, which were later posted online. Kelly helped her get a job as an exotic dancer, then sent her money for the outfits she needed at work. The woman reportedly used some of the cash to buy marijuana. Kelly also used city funds to take her on an out-of-town investigative trip to Alabama, where he was looking into a separate murder case. As an investigation into his relationship with Stafford was in its preliminary stages, Kelly secured his pension by abruptly retiring from the force in November of 2019. The following year, the scandal went public and the 50-year-old faced multiple charges of official misconduct. He admitted to have had an intimate relationship with Stafford, but the investigation found that he hadn't used his position to influence her ongoing case. His actions did, however, damage his credibility and ability to testify in other homicide investigations. To avoid jail time, Kelly eventually accepted a plea deal in 2021, admitting a misdemeanor count of misconduct and agreed never to return to law enforcement. Number 5. Shelby Cornelio. Law enforcement in St. Petersburg, Florida, conducted a traffic stop in the early hours of May the 17th of 2022. They identified the driver as 26-year-old Shelby Cornelio, who was a deputy for the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. Cornelio exhibited signs of impairity that included slurred speech, bloodshot eyes, and being unsteady on her feet. She agreed to field sobriety tests but failed them, and officers found that her blood alcohol level was between 0.206 and 0.291, whereas the legal limit in the state was 0.08. Cornelio was charged with driving under the influence and taken to the Pinellas County Jail without incident. She had been working for the Sheriff's Office since 2018 and was part of its Patrol Operations Bureau, but was immediately terminated following her arrest. Number 4. Jason DePrimer. In the fall of 2022, Jason DePrimer, the deputy chief of the Cartersville Police Department in Georgia, was visiting Orlando, Florida to attend the annual American Polygraph Association seminar. He didn't take his own vehicle, but one assigned to the department's undercover unit. Upon reaching his destination, 45-year-old DePrimer contacted an escort, whom he found in an ad and agreed to pay $120 for a full service of half an hour. Prior to the conversation, he'd been scammed out of $200 by another alleged escort. She'd asked for the picture of a Cash App card as proof of his ability to pay her, but then used the information he'd provided to take his money. DePrimer's second attempt at eliciting escort services would, however, end much worse. The rendezvous took place at an undisclosed location, and the police officer brought $180, which was more than the asking price, as well as a pack of White Claw hard seltzer, which he gave to his illicit date. Unbeknownst to DePrimer, the Polk County Sheriff's Office was in the midst of its week-long Operation Fall Haul 2, an undercover investigation aimed at finding and rescuing human trafficking victims. The woman he thought was an escort was actually an undercover detective. On September 1st of 2022, DePrimer was arrested for soliciting escort services and was one of 160 people taken into custody during the operation. DePrimer, a graduate of the FBI Academy, was a well-respected officer in his community and had been with the Cartersville Police Department for nearly 3 decades. He was placed on administrative leave following his arrest, but ultimately resigned. Number 3. Jeffrey Wharton. In 2020, New Mexico police officer Jeffrey Wharton of the Albuquerque Police Department unleashed a brutal attack on his girlfriend. Part of the assault was caught on the Ring doorbell camera of the couple's Rio Rancho residence, and it showed Wharton placing the woman in a chokehold and dragging her into their home. She had to be hospitalized after being beaten so badly that she suffered a brain hemorrhage and multiple facial injuries. When Wharton showed up for his shift on February the 22nd, other officers informed him that they had a domestic violence warrant for him before placing him under arrest in a body cam recorded incident. A female officer removed his service weapon, gun belt, and gear in what was interpreted by the media as the department underlining the embarrassment that Wharton had become for the force. His uniform was cut off his body with scissors while he was handcuffed. He was then escorted to a cruiser and taken to jail, where he'd spend the following 6 months as his trial unfolded. Wharton ultimately admitted aggravated battery and was spared further jail time after being given 3 years probation. Number 2. Mikhail Popkov. Based on the confessions made following his arrest, former police officer Mikhail Popkov is often regarded as Russia's most prolific serial killer. He was mainly active from 1992 to 2010 in his home city of Angarsk and the wider Irkutsk region in Siberia. Popkov preyed on his victims, all but one of whom were women, while wearing his official uniform and offering to give them lifts in his car late at night. The fact that he was a member of law enforcement played a significant role in him gaining their trust. He reportedly chose women whom he considered immoral and who physically resembled his alcoholic mother, who'd abused him as a child. Popkov drove the victims to remote locations where he forced them to undress. He then attacked them in extremely brutal fashion, using a variety of tools that included knives, axes, screwdrivers, or baseball bats. Popkov then had relations with the victims as they were dying or after they were dead before extensively mutilating their remains. He decapitated at least one of them and gouged another's heart out, which led to him being known as the werewolf. At home, the police officer was described as the perfect husband and father. His wife, Elena, was also a member of law enforcement and, while not believed to have been an accomplice, gave alibis for Popkov on several occasions when suspicions for the gruesome murders focused on him. One of the serial killer's surviving victims, named as Svetlana M., clearly identified him as the police officer who'd abducted and abused her in January of 1998. Popkov forced Svetlana, who was then in her teens, to take off her clothes and then smashed her head against a tree, rendering her unconscious. In spite of being left for dead in sub-zero temperatures, the teen survived and subsequently accused him. Elena made up an alibi for her husband and the case was archived, but Svetlana's testimony would provide a vital basis for the investigative efforts that followed. Popkov had eluded the authorities for nearly 2 decades before a combination of factors led to his arrest. In 2012, the authorities had found tracks from a Lada 4x4, an off-road vehicle used by the police, at numerous crime scenes following a massive DNA testing operation of Irkutsk police officers. Popkov was a match for genetic material recovered from several victims. Following his arrest, he revealed that he committed the first murder on impulse, saying, "I just felt I wanted to kill a woman I was given a lift to in my car. He was given a life sentence in 2015 for 22 murders and 2 attempted murders. The following year, he confessed to 59 additional killings, 56 of which were confirmed, and he received a second life sentence. In July of 2020, Popkov, then in his mid-50s, revealed he'd been responsible for 2 more killings, bringing his total number of admitted victims to 83. Number 1. Kevin Rodriguez. North Carolina police officer Kevin Rodriguez, aged 33, was arrested by his Raleigh colleagues in February of 2022 after being caught selling cocaine while on duty. The investigation had begun in November of the previous year when confidential sources tipped local law enforcement and the Drug Enforcement Agency that Rodriguez was a dealer. An informant then arranged to meet him for a transaction on January the 24th of 2022. According to a criminal complaint, Rodriguez arrived in uniform and with his duty firearm while driving a marked Raleigh patrol car. He was reported to have turned over 56 grams of cocaine in exchange for $2,600 in cash. The police officer was arrested on charges of drug distribution and possession of a firearm in a drug trafficking crime. At the time, he held the rank of field operations officer but was suspended without pay as an internal affairs investigation was underway. For his crimes, Rodriguez faced a minimum of 5 years in prison and a maximum of life in prison. Thanks for watching. Would you rather have no police in your neighborhood or have a day every year when all crime was legal? Let us know in the comments section below.